Welcome everyone to this fourth in our Did You Know series for community worker webinars. Welcome, my name's Teresa Kelly. I'm the project manager for the Respect at Work Legal Service at Legal Aid New South Wales. Today's a pretty big presentation. We have 4 presenters from specialist and local legal aid teams who will be presenting information about their particular areas of work during this webinar. Series have been created in response to what the community told us that they needed to know from us when we were visiting the regions and from speaking to organisations and volunteers who support Palm and migrant workers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from which we are broadcasting today. I'm broadcasting from the land of the Gumbaynggirr people, and we pay our respects to the elders of this land, both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending today's webinar or watching the recording. As a reminder, this presentation is intended for general information only and cannot be relied on as legal advice. The information is accurate at the time of broadcasting, but may have changed if you're watching the recording at a later date. If you need legal help about a particular situation, please start with our team at Law Access New South Wales via web chat at www.legalaid.nsw.gov.au or give us a call on 1300 888 529. Our presenters today, Anna Newen is the Senior Solicitor at the Respect at Work Legal Service at Legal Aid. The Respect at Work Legal Service team provides trauma-informed legal assistance to people experiencing workplace sexual harassment and or discrimination. Anna has expertise in anti-discrimination law and workplace sexual harassment. Prior to Legal Aid, she worked at Intellectual Disability Rights Service and the Australian Centre for Disability Law, specialising in disability rights and disability discrimination law. Claude Mucho is the Community Engagement Officer here at the Respect at Work Legal Service at Legal Aid, where he provides trauma-informed community engagement and community legal education to groups and community organisations supporting individuals experiencing workplace sexual harassment and discrimination. Claude's career has been dedicated to guiding migrants and refugees, including at-risk and marginalised communities, towards a brighter future. I'll now hand over to Anna and Claude from the Respect at Work Legal Service. Thank you.
My name is Claude Mucho. I'm Community Engagement Project Officer within Respect at Work Legal Service. Thank you all to join us for this session today. But before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodian on the land I work and live, acknowledge the deep respect and care about the Aboriginal community, and also undertake to listen and learn from Aboriginal communities and people as I work in this space to honor the ancient culture of this country, which always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Next slide. For the housekeeping, I just want to let you know that today it's not about legal advice, it's general information only. And if you seek legal advice, either for yourself or for your client, please speak to me or other colleagues who are here after the presentation. We will share all our details, contact on how you can contact us. Today, we're going to cover a few things, especially the concept about Respect at Work Legal Service, and we'll talk briefly about Legal Aid in New South Wales, what we do, and talk about discrimination and sexual harassment, and also what people can do about discrimination and sexual harassment at work, and how can you help people who are experiencing discrimination and sexual harassment. And at the end, we'll open up with the questions, and we'll be able to answer all the questions after the presentation, as Teresa mentioned. So before I start talking about Respect at Work Legal Services, I just want to give you a brief overview about Legal Aid New South Wales. These are bunch of lawyers around all New South Wales who give free legal help to people who cannot afford lawyers. And we help with the criminal law problems. For example, when you are in trouble with the police and you need a legal advice. At Legal Aid also, we help people with the family law problems. Example, when your relationships end and there are kids involved. And also we help with civil law problems. When we talk about civil law problems, these are problems you might come across in everyday life. Things like getting kicked out of rental house, especially these days, it's a crisis with the rental, getting Centrelink, dealing with the fines, problem at work, or when people rape you. We have different offices across the state, so you may check where your nearest legal aid office is located. Respect at Work Legal Services, or ROLES, it's acronyms, but when we talk about ROLES or Respect at Work Legal Service, the same. We help people with the discrimination and sexual harassment in workplace. This means we offer free and confidential advice to anyone in New South Wales who is experiencing sexual harassment and discrimination. We particularly focus on supporting young people, Aboriginal people, people with a disability, as well as culturally and linguistically diverse community. As you know, discrimination and sexual harassment is not okay. It is against the law. Sexual harassment and discrimination can occur in any workplace and any industry, sector, and at any level. It's really important to understand all these concepts and for you to be able to support the client you are working with. There is a few survey produced with, next slide, with Australian Human Rights Commission that I want to see how it's a crisis. These are a few incidents of workplace sexual harassment that happen in 12 months. You can see 1 in 5 people experienced sexual harassment at work. In the last 5 years, 1 in 3 experienced sexual harassment at work, and 41% are women and 26% men. As you can see, 56% from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and 46 people aged between 18 and 29, and 48 people with disability. So when we're talking about sexual harassment at work, it's something really happening, and it's a crisis, as you may see from this survey. There is some forms of work sexual harassment, and these are nature of work sexual harassment, could be in form of sexually suggestive comments or jokes, and it can be in terms of intrusive questions about a personal private life or physical appearance, or it can be inappropriate staring or tearing that made them feel intimidated, or unwelcome touching, or inappropriate physical contact. And among all this nature, sexually suggestive comment or jokes comes with 27%, and intrusive question comes with 23%. All this, we got it from Australian Human Rights Commission survey 2022. I will pass it on to my colleague Anna to go deep and explain more detail about discriminations and other legal concepts and what you can do. Up to you, Anna.
Thank you, Claude. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I work and live on. I work and live on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. I acknowledge that this land was never ceded, and this land was, is, and always will be Aboriginal land. So before I talk about discrimination, I kind of wanted to share a little bit about why I agreed to do this presentation today. Not only because of my passion for helping people who have experienced discrimination law and also working with migrant communities, but another reason is because when I think of migrant workers, I think of my mum and my dad, particularly my mum because I'm very close to my mum. My mum is from Vietnam. She arrived in Australia in the 80s as a Vietnamese refugee. She left the country after the Vietnam War decided, okay, I need to leave everything that I know and start a new life, not just for myself, but my future children. So she came to Australia not knowing the language at all, not knowing anyone, but she knew that she wanted to start a new life to support herself and her future family. So she had ingrained in her that she needed to work hard so that she could support her family. She is a very strong woman. Up until this day, I find her one of the strongest women in my life, and she's very strongly opinionated. She has gone through a lot of adversity, but up until today, she will continually say to me, Anna, I just want to live a quiet life. I don't want to complain. I just want to live a quiet and happy life where I can just be with my family. And for a long time, I didn't quite understand this because I thought, you're living in Australia, you have so much freedom, you have so many rights. Why are you this discreet when you've decided to leave all of your suppression and the persecution back in your home country to start this new life? And it wasn't until I was a little bit older when I understood that there are a lot of factors that she's faced throughout her life that makes her the way that she is. Not only because she has difficulty understanding and speaking English, but a lot of the trauma that she's faced back in her home country, wanting to prioritize her family and ensure that she has enough resources and money to support her own family, as well as the racism that she's dealt with as soon as she arrived in Australia. Been constantly being told, no, you're not right, keep quiet, just continue to do your job. So when we talk about what we do at Respect at Work Legal Service, and we talk about how we can provide our services to migrant workers, I think a lot about the barriers that my mum faced and continues to face as someone who arrived in Australia from Vietnam. So while the purpose of today is to talk about sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace, we really want to make our services accessible, and also thinking about the barriers that migrant workers face, and also ensure that when migrant workers do face any issues in the workplace, they know who to talk to. It might not be us, it might not be lawyers that they first speak to. If anything, if they have any issues at work, they're probably going to speak to the community. They're going to speak to social workers. They're going to speak to you. And if you leave today with some information about what discrimination is, what sexual harassment is, so that when you're speaking to your clients and they feel comfortable enough to speak to you, and then they ask for help, and then they eventually call us, we feel like we achieved our purpose for today. So putting that background aside, I'll talk about a little bit more about discrimination, sexual harassment. As I said, we don't expect you to become experts in this area. What we really hope is that you take something away so that you know when someone's speaking to you, when a client is speaking to you and they're saying, I feel like something bad has happened at work. And if you recognize some of these key words, and if you think, well, there's someone that can actually help you, you can speak to legal aid and there are options available to you, then that's something that we really hope to achieve today. So discrimination, what is discrimination? A lot of people will say, well, I've been treated unfairly, therefore I've been discriminated. That is technically right, but under the law, in order to be discriminated and have protections under the law, it has to be one of these reasons. So it has to be unfair treatment because of your race, your disability, your age, your gender identity, your sexual orientation, and your pregnancy. So to give you an example, someone could apply for a job and then they go through all of their processes and they're up until the references and the medical examination. They disclose that they have a disability, and then the employer says, no, we can't give you your job because we're concerned that you can actually do your job because of your disability. The reason why they're not offered that person the job is because of the disability. So the unfair treatment is because of the disability. So in that case, it would be discrimination, and they would have avenues to make a formal complaint. Victimization is really important, and the reason why I want to highlight this is because a lot of the clients that I speak to, when I tell them that something that they've experienced is discrimination, a lot of them will say, I don't want to make a complaint. I don't want to cause trouble because I'm scared that I'm going to lose my job if I make a complaint. A lot of people actually don't realize that victimization is protected under the law. So if you make a complaint to your manager, or you say, you speak to your, even speaking to your co-worker about something that's happened and you believe it's sexual harassment or discrimination, and your manager overhears it because they think that you're going to make that complaint, and then they treat you unfairly because of it, then that is victimization. And they are protected under law in relation to victimization. It's really important that we raise awareness about this, because a lot of people will find that they don't want to make a complaint, or they don't even want to speak to a lawyer because they're scared that the manager will find out and then dismiss them. So it's really important that we share that victimization is against the law and they are protected under it if that happens. If they're being treated unfairly because they have made a complaint, or they indicate that they want to make a complaint, or most importantly, they get dismissed because they have made a complaint or they want to make a complaint. So when you're speaking to your clients or they say, okay, something wrong has happened at work, and you say, okay, that sounds like discrimination, sounds like sexual harassment, a lot of them will probably say, well, what can I actually do about it? I don't want to go to court. That's too time consuming. I don't have the energy to go to court. Yes, court is one option, but there's many options to resolve discrimination or sexual harassment. In fact, most of our matters and cases that we work on are resolved before they even go to court. We actually don't have many court cases because there's so many ways to resolve discrimination or sexual harassment in the workplace. And some of these options can include writing a letter to the employer where we've outlined, okay, we've been told that this has happened, this is discrimination, this is sexual harassment. These are the resolution proposals that we want in order to resolve this complaint. And we have been successful on many occasions. And because of that, our clients have been able to maintain their job and still work at their job. So I know with a lot of people, not just migrant workers, it's really important for them to stay in their job, for them to continue in their employment because of they need to support themselves, they need to support their family. So going to court is not the only option. We can resolve it in many ways where we can try to maintain that relationship with the employer, particularly where it's really, really important for them. And I know for many people, employment is important. At the end of the day, we want people to know that as lawyers, we won't do anything without their decision. We're not going to take their matter and go to court without them being involved. If they want to maintain their employment, we will respect that, and we'll give them options where we think that it's more appropriate for them, such as writing a letter. It could be negotiating with the employer to get a resolution. Okay, so I want to stress that going to court is not the only option. Of course, sometimes writing a letter to an employer might not always be appropriate. For example, maybe it's been a few months since they've resigned or since they've been dismissed, but now they realize that something bad has happened, such as discrimination, sexual harassment. What can you do? It depends on each case, but if we decide, or if even the client doesn't want to write a letter to the employer anymore or their former employer, then they can make a formal complaint. So you can make a formal complaint to Anti-Discrimination New South Wales, the Australian Human Rights Commission, or the Fair Work Commission. The process of making a complaint is pretty self-explanatory. You write in a complaint what has happened, what kind of outcomes that you want, and what happens is once they receive the complaint, they'll give a copy of the complaint to the employer. And then after that, each of these bodies, depending who you make a complaint to, they will schedule a mediation or conciliation where the parties try to resolve a solution, an outcome, and then that means that the parties don't have to go to court. So I don't expect you to memorize all of these different bodies, but I want to stress that there are options available where we don't have to go to court. I also want to stress that if you speak to someone and they've said, okay, it seems like discrimination occurred or it seems like sexual harassment occurred, encourage them to get legal advice as soon as possible, because for each of these different bodies, there is what we call a limitation date, meaning that you need to submit your complaint within a certain period of time. Otherwise, they might not accept it. So For some of these dates, it could be less than 21 days. So always encourage your clients to get legal advice as soon as possible. But also, if it's been more than 21 days, don't be scared. Don't think, okay, I don't have any options. Speak to us anyways, because there are many other options that might be available. For example, with Australian Human Rights Commission and Anti-Discrimination New South Wales, there's about 12 months to 24 months to make the complaint. So takeaway is there are options. Try to get advice as soon as possible. If it's within 21 days, try to encourage them to get that advice. But even if it's past 21 days, don't despair. It doesn't mean that there's no options available. Speak to us anyway, and then we can find out whether there are any options for them to make a further complaint. So what outcomes are possible? A lot of people think it's just compensation. Yes, compensation is the main thing. Compensation such as money for income that you could have made, or money that to cover any emotional distress or hurt as a result of the conduct, such as sexual harassment or discrimination. But there are many other outcomes that are possible. It can include the employer making changes to the policy so that it doesn't happen again, education and training for the people who are involved, and maybe even for the whole workplace. It could be an apology, could be disciplinary action against the person who sexually harassed or discriminated against your client or you, and also changes to a workplace or work conditions. So for example, if you have a disability and you need adjustments in order to do your job and your employer hasn't made those adjustments, we can also request for those changes so that you can continue in your role. Okay, so I know we've got about 6 minutes left. I do want to talk about a case study, a real life case study that I helped with. This is obviously not her. I've changed her name, but I wanted to talk about this case to kind of highlight the barriers that she faced and how we helped overcome them. So Arpa she's from Bangladesh, and she arrived in Australia in about 2010. And she comes from a very religious and very conservative background, where she doesn't have many friendships outside of her family that are male. So when she started working at this new place, her manager started sexually harassing her, started making very sexual jokes. She knew that this was wrong, but she just didn't really understand that this was actually sexual harassment. She didn't speak to her family about it because of the stigma involved. In fact, when she spoke to her friend who was living down the street, her friend actually said to her, "This sounds like sexual harassment. It's not right. You should make a complaint." So she didn't even know. She didn't even know the process. She didn't even know that it was sexual harassment. She knew it was wrong, but she just didn't know that it was against the law, because she always thought in order for there to be sexual harassment, it has to be physical, it has to be quite serious. In her situation, it was sexual jokes. It was her manager constantly asking her out and hitting on her. So in her mind, even though she knew it was wrong, she didn't think it was sexual harassment. She actually came to legal aid because her friend suggested it. So she didn't even know that these services were available. And when I spoke to her, she had, at this point in time, she had gone through a lot of trauma because of what happened. And I talked her through it. The process was quite long because it was quite difficult for her to open up to me. And so I met up with her. We had face-to-face meetings. I was patient with her. I explained to her the process and that we could help her make a complaint. She was really worried at first because she thought she had to face the person who sexually harassed her. And I said, no, you don't actually have to do that. Because I'm your lawyer, I can represent you. I can negotiate an outcome for you on your behalf with the employer, with the employer's lawyer. And that's what we did. So she didn't even have to face him at all. She didn't even have to appear in the conciliation. I read a statement on her behalf to indicate how the conduct impacted her. And as a result, we were able to get a really successful outcome. We were able to get compensation that amounted to 6 figures. So that was a fantastic outcome for her, because she was able to move on with her life and also continue with her dealing with her mental health, particularly as a result of this conduct. And we did it while trying to respect the barriers that she faced, having face-to-face meetings, having support person in meetings, having interpreters, and also understanding the trauma that she was facing at the time. So at Legal Aid, we really think about the barriers that not only migrant workers face, but also people will face when they've been discriminated or sexually harassed. So how can you help? So for those people, for the community who do work a lot with migrant workers, like I said, lawyers will probably be the fourth or fifth or even sixth person that they speak to when something has happened at work. So what can you do to help? Well, you can speak to them and write down some notes and then say to them, I know of a place that might be able to help you. They might not be comfortable to speak to us at first, but if you want to speak to us, if you want to speak to Legal Aid and try to figure out, is this something that Legal Aid can help with? Feel free to do that. We'll send you our email and our contact number at the end of this session. Sometimes it takes a while for people who have experienced sexual harassment or discrimination, particularly where English is not their first language, to come to us. So as long as they know that our service is available and that they feel safe enough to speak to you, then I think that's a great step. And then if once they're ready to speak to us, and if you've written notes, that will be really helpful for them so they don't have to repeat the story. Other things like you can get us to call them and try to book an appointment rather than them having to call us and go through that process. So little steps like that will really help them with trying to gain that help and that assistance without re-traumatizing them. So like I said, you can contact RAWS, whether it's via phone, we can do it via video call. We can also do face-to-face at any of our Legal Aid offices. We can have a support person attend if they want a person to attend. Like I said, we provide many ways to assist clients. We write, negotiate a letter, we make a formal complaint, and we can also represent them in court. So these are numbers which Teresa will provide at the end of this session. Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Anna.
now I hand it back to Teresa. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Hannah, and thank you, Claude, for that fantastic presentation. There's the case studies and hearing about your mum, Anna, really sort of hits home for why we do what we do. Our next presenter is Ellie Haas. Ellie is a lawyer in the Legal Aid Wagga Wagga office. Ellie oversees the civil team's work in the Riverina Murray region and works with a housing specialist lawyer in Wagga Wagga and a generalist civil lawyer in Albury. Prior to Legal Aid, Ellie worked with No More Legal Service, providing legal assistance to survivors of child abuse. Ellie and her team provide civil law assistance to help improve the lives of those experiencing disadvantage in our region across various areas of law, especially in housing, employment, discrimination, police accountability, and fines. Take it away, Ellie.
Thanks, Teresa, and hello, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I'm sure you're all extremely busy with your client work, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from Wiradjuri country, and I pay my deep respects to all of the Wiradjuri elders and the wonderful colleagues that I get to work with who are also Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. I'd also like to acknowledge the incredible work that you as our listeners are doing supporting workers across New South Wales, especially our migrant workers and their loved ones. I wanted to acknowledge the pivotal role that you and by extension Legal Aid can play in the lives of those individuals facing extreme hardship in various areas of their lives. And lastly, acknowledge the enormous benefits of the positive relationships that we can have as Legal Aid with you and your organisation to refer and learn from each other about how we can best support migrant workers and other members of our community. Really, I just want to talk about two things today. and that's what you can expect would be your client's journey with legal aid, and then sort of do a bit of a dive into a really useful tool on how to refer clients. Anna touched on that a little bit a moment ago, but I'm hoping that this tool will complement what Anna said just a moment ago. So a lot of thought has gone into how legal aid works with our with the great people in New South Wales, our clients and our organisations that we work with. And at the heart of our standards of client service delivery is, of course, putting the client at the centre of what we do. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about what you can expect from a referral of your clients to legal aid. I can, of course, speak from a regional officer's perspective. I love working in the regions, and I love how we can support our clients in person from our offices. But I also think it's important to acknowledge the different types of help that we can offer, so that you can feel safe when you refer your clients to us. So normally, clients first make contact with us over the phone. That's the most common way. And usually their first port of call is to speak with one of our fabulous legal client support officers. And when they make that contact, I'll just share my screen for, I'll sort of dip in and out of this as well. So apologies if that's a bit jarring, but these are our client service standards. All of us consider the individual needs of our clients. We respect and listen to our clients, and we respond to our clients' needs. We actually have a 48-hour turnaround for when they first contact us. Our wonderful legal client service officers will, of course, go into the detail of what legal advice that person is eligible for, book them into the right place. The lawyer will then try their absolute best to discuss the options, potential outcomes, and keep them as updated as the client needs to be. And then, of course, refer. So if that's not something that legal aid can assist with. So no doubt this is very similar to how your organisations operate, but that's the standard that legal aid has set for us, putting the client at the centre. So I thought we could quickly do an example, if it's all right, just talking it out. So if your client contacts legal aid over the phone, and let's say they have a discrimination matter at work. So we've got someone that Anna and Claude was referring to in their discussions just before. So they will call, and the legal client support officer will ask, first of all, about their particular individual needs, such as, do you need an interpreter? Are there safe ways that we need to contact you? Do we need to make adjustments for you? So, for example, just recently, we had a client who has a vision impairment. So it was critical for them to have it was actually critical for them to have a face-to-face appointment, because they had a certain way that they took in information. And so we made sure that we took in that adjustment for them. The legal client support officer will then identify the particular legal issues, as there often is more than one. So in this case, with Anna and Claude's client group, the first issue would be the discrimination that that person is facing in their employment law context. So the client would first be booked for legal advice in the Respect at Work legal service clinic, which may in turn then become representation depending on what the client is seeking. It could be that, as Anna said, writing to the employer is the step, or it could be that we end up representing that client at the Fair Work Commission as well. The client may also at that first call present with, for example, domestic violence that they're experiencing at home, and they don't understand, you know, what their options are in dealing with the domestic violence that they're experiencing. So the legal client support officer may then book that client into the domestic violence unit, which is a separate unit at Legal Aid. So it's the one client and their various needs are met, not necessarily by the same lawyer, but certainly through the different clinics that are available through Legal Aid. Your role in that for a client could be to present, to be with your client at that first contact and support your client to tell their story before they speak with a lawyer, so that from the outset, their various issues are addressed in a timely way. Like Anna said, sometimes there are time limits that present and that your support can be invaluable in that way. So I thought then I would talk a bit about our fabulous website. In particular, this page that I'm about to share. I hope everyone can see that. So it's My Problem is About, and there's so much wonderful plain English information on our website about all of the legal issues that we support people in resolving. You know, I won't go into all of the particulars here, but if I go into discrimination, sorry, just because that's the topic that we are focusing on a little bit today, is you can read about all of the resources that are available. Say if your client is a little bit tentative to get legal aid advice immediately, you can talk through the legal information that we have on our website and go through the discrimination toolkit, which I just think is one of the best resources out there, and all of the places where your rights can be determined in a forum as well. That's just a plug for our really, in my opinion, helpful and clear website. The next thing I wanted to do is just talk you through a tool called the Law Checkup tool. Now, I speak about this in my client work day in, day out. I take it with me to every meeting with every stakeholder, and I'm taking an opportunity to plug it today. The Law Checkup tool is a form that is a way for you to ask your clients about their legal well-being. So in the same way that you might go to a GP and they might talk about, you know, different health issues spotting, we have a legal issue spotting tool, and I'll share it with you now. So how the form works is if your client is has a number of issues that they would like assistance with, this form can really focus the information in one place. So you would, you know, put your client's name, your information as the referring organisation and contact, client's details. I like this part here, any safety issues to be aware of when we contact the client, especially if there's domestic or family violence. Any court dates, that can be really important for triaging. Of course, if there's something urgent, we try to act and accommodate it every time before the court date comes. And then this is the law checkup section of the form. So it really asks you to think about legal issues as a whole for that person. Do they have money, some financial hardship at the moment? Has that stemmed from an unfair consumer contract? Does it stem from the fact that they are that they were in receipt of a Centrelink payment and now that payment has been suspended for some reason? Are they eligible for the National Disability Insurance Scheme but cannot access it? Are they being evicted? Have they talked to you about a notice of termination? Are they experiencing violence? Are their children experiencing violence and as a consequence needing some advice about that? Is there a family breakup? Is there discrimination, harassment or vilification, which is what Anna and Claude talked about? Is there any mental health or guardianship needs that they might face? For example, if it's not a person with a disability that impacts their decision making, do they need some help with that? And also if they've been treated unfairly by government authorities, for example, the police or corrective service officers. So all you'd have to do is at a very high level is just tick boxes that apply to your situation or to that client's. And apologies, they also go into these here. And then of course we capture a client's consent. And then once that form is complete and you can email it through to your local legal aid office, what will happen is the legal client support officer, who I referred to before, will then contact your client and ensure that they're booked into the appropriate clinics and to the appropriate places and take into account all of the appropriate adjustments that that person needs. Lastly, Teresa, I'm not sure how we're going for time, but lastly, I thought we could just have a go of a bit of an interactive exercise of legal issue spotting. So Yaz from our wonderful comms team, CLE team, I thought we'd talk about Zara. And I'm hoping that if you're feeling like you want to, that you can use the chat function to put in the legal issues that you think that Zara is experiencing and how you might assist Zara in addressing those legal issues. So Zara, completely fictional. I invented this character out of thin air. Zara comes to you because she's struggling financially. She owes money to her landlord. She's experiencing domestic violence and wants to escape with her children. She has fines and her employer is threatening to sack her if she's late again. So first of all, perhaps let's talk about some of the legal issues that Zara might be facing, and then what would legal aid do to support with Zara's issues. I'll just drag the chat up. I think, oh, wonderful, we've got one here. Fantastic, thank you, Annie. I'm not sure if people can see this. Annie has said, refer to the DV unit to advise and potentially represent if an ADVO is required, spot on. In terms of the struggling financially, potentially some advice on her obligations as a tenant to address her rental arrears would be, we would want to book into the local office for that sort of advice. Any other ideas? Thank you, Annie. Hi, Etihad, thank you. You're an Arabic interpreter, so that's great. Nice to meet you. I'm not sure if everyone can see that question. She can leave the tenancy with no financial penalty due to DV. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Annie. That's spot on. There are particular rights for people who are experiencing DV to break a lease with no penalty. Spot on. In terms of the rental arrears, we probably would want to address that as well. maybe a referral as well to a local brokerage service who could plug some of that arrears because of her particular circumstances. Yeah, I think some family law advice would probably be needed in terms of separating and the care for the children. Thank you, Etihad. That's absolutely right. Getting Zara a safe accommodation through housing or community housing. Yes, definitely referring to a local housing support service. Sure, yeah. The last issue there is, of course, her employment law rights. So we would want to dig a little bit deeper into why the employer is threatening to sack her because of lateness. We would want to look at whether that is discriminatory because of a particular an issue that Zara has. We'd want to have a look at whether oh yes, Annie, brilliant. Annie's come in again with yes, 10 days of DV leave available. 100%. We'd want to advise her that she potentially has that right, and potentially represent her or advocate for her to take up that right as well. And yeah, a potential discrimination claim. I agree, Annie. So I think I guess the other thing is I cannot espouse or brag about financial counsellors more. I think they are just phenomenal supports for people. I might refer Zara to get a statement of financial position from a financial counsellor, potentially do some advocacy for her in terms of any debts that she owes, because they can be complex and they can be with credit companies, or they can be with telco companies, and Legal Aid has done some amazing work in the consumer law space to wipe a lot of debts as well. If there's fines, of course, Luana is going to talk about this, but yeah, we have an amazing working development order team. Luana works for them, and we could support Zara to address her fines as well. So, Teresa, I think I've probably gone over, but thank you, Annie and Etihad, for your contributions. That's wonderful. And I hope you find the Law Checkup referral tool helpful. And your local legal aid office is there for you as well for any questions.
Thank you, Ellie. Okay, so our last presenter is Luana Harris, and Luana is a solicitor at the Work Directions Order Service at Legal Aid New South Wales. The WDO service, excuse me, is a specialist fine service that exists to assist clients in financial hardship with managing their fines debts. As a WDO solicitor, Luana provides advice and assistance to clients and WDO sponsors in the Central Coast, Hunter, and the New England area. This includes assisting clients with reviewing their fines, finding a suitable WDO sponsor, and lodging write-off applications in circumstances where clients are experiencing particular hardship. And we might go a little bit over because I know there's a fair bit of information that Luana has for you, so I hope everyone doesn't mind staying that extra couple of minutes. Take it away, Luana.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that everyone can see the slides, and I'm not speaking without reference to the slides. Perfect. Yep. Awesome. Okay, sorry, just give me a second to find where I was. Okay, so welcome everyone. My name's Luana and I'm from the Work and Development Order Service at Legal Aid New South Wales. Before I begin, I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all meeting virtually today, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and also extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples present or listening in today. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. So the Work and Development Order Service is a statewide service that assists vulnerable and disadvantaged clients with their fines debt. Now, this little map on the screen demonstrates the regions that our team services and the types of assistance we can provide. So that includes providing fines advice, assisting clients with locating a suitable WDO sponsor, and applying for an internal review or write-off application to Revenue New South Wales. And I'll touch on those two options later on. So this session will cover what WDOs are, the eligibility criteria for clients to participate, the types of activities clients can engage in, options for when a WDO is not suitable, and how to contact our service with referrals or fines related questions. So what are WDOs? Well, I think just by way of background, the WDO scheme is jointly delivered by Legal Aid New South Wales, the Department of Justice and Revenue New South Wales. The scheme allows for eligible people to clear their fines debt by participating in activities with WDO sponsors. So activities include volunteer work, courses, counselling or treatment programs. And the aim of the scheme is to improve the difficulties that fines present to the most disadvantaged people in the community. So we know this to include culturally and linguistically diverse people and recently arrived refugees. So which fines are we talking about? It's important to understand the types of fines that can be included on a WDO. The most important thing is that the fines can only have been issued in New South Wales, and they can be any of the following categories. So it can include fine notices or penalty notices. Common examples include public health order fines, parking or speeding fines, riding a bike without a helmet, or using public transport without a ticket. And I like to include these examples because they demonstrate how many different agencies can issue fines in New South Wales, which clearly highlights how prevalent of an issue fines can be. The second category of fines include court fines. So this includes court-imposed fines, court costs, and victim support levies. And finally, orders for restitution, which were previously known as victims' restitution orders. So fines do have a big impact on our clients. And I guess it's important to note that people can be fined from the age of 10, which means that a young person could turn 18 and find that they have already incurred a debt before they've even secured stable employment or in some cases obtained their driver's license. So with your clients, it's likely that they have been issued a fine and don't understand why or what they did wrong. And we find that fines are often overlooked and people can fail to understand the cycle of fines, especially where it concerns people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So it has been our experience that people with multiple disadvantage are less likely to challenge the fine as unfair. They are then not in a position to pay the fine, which leads to inaction, receiving further penalties due to enforcement action taken by Revenue New South Wales, which can then lead to more adverse consequences and compounding disadvantage. So are fines a real problem? If you take away anything from this presentation, it should be that fines are a real problem, and failing to deal with fines can lead to real adverse consequences. So I mentioned briefly in the last slide that Revenue New South Wales do have powers of enforcement with, so this includes the ability to issue license suspensions, RMS business restrictions. So you may find that some clients with fines have RMS business restrictions, so it can prevent them from actually being able to obtain their license. They can issue a property seizure order. They can also issue a garnishee order where Revenue New South Wales can take amounts from a person's bank account to recover what's owed to them. And finally, community service orders, but these are less likely to happen. So in terms of eligibility and who can participate and undertake a WDO, any person, including children and adults, can undertake a WDO as long as they meet one of the 6 eligibility criteria outlined in the WDO guidelines, and I've highlighted them on the screen. So this includes any young person under 18 years of age, any person experiencing acute economic hardship. So this includes, but is not limited to, anyone on a Centrelink benefit, anyone experiencing homelessness, and we know this to include, people who are couch surfing, living in temporary accommodation, living in caravan parks, just to name a few examples. Anyone living with a mental illness, or who someone with an intellectual disability or cognitive impairment, or a person who has a serious addiction to drugs, alcohol, or volatile substance. So your client would not need to satisfy all 6 criteria. They would just need to at least satisfy one. But for the most part, they would need to at least be able to satisfy an inability to pay the fine. But in our experience, we find that most of our clients will at least satisfy 2 or more of the criteria because of their particular vulnerability and disadvantage background. So on top of meeting one of the 6 eligibility criteria, a sponsor must also be able to satisfy. A sponsor must also be satisfied that the person is unable to pay the fine, or it is more appropriate for the client to do a WDO rather than pay the fine, and that the person does not possess substantial assets other than the home they are living in. So when referring a client to a WDO sponsor, you should consider whether your client has proof of their eligibility and capacity to pay their fine, because it is a requirement that WDO sponsors review this evidence and retain a copy for their records. So a common question we get asked is whether a client can engage in a WDO if they are working. So the short answer is yes, but they would still need to meet the eligibility requirements, and Revenue may ask for further information just to be satisfied that they are eligible. Now, I mentioned that WDO sponsors have to keep proof of eligibility documents. The next few slides flesh out the definition of each eligibility criteria and provide some examples of what this evidence of eligibility may include. And I guess it's useful for you to know because it can be helpful to send these documents with your referral to make it easier on the sponsor, especially if you feel that your client isn't in a position to be able to do that without support. I will just kind of briefly touch on the example on the screen, but I'll skip through the next few slides because you will be provided with a PDF version of this slideshow just for your reference. So just as an example, if a person satisfies the criteria by being a young person under the age of 18, they would need to be able to supply evidence that confirms their date of birth. So common examples include a birth certificate, an identification card, a learner's driver's license, or a passport. So I'm just going to skip ahead and we can talk about WDO activities. So these are the types of activities that can be done on a WDO with an approved WDO sponsor. So courses, so that includes courses at TAFE, university or college, life skills programs like cooking, gardening, anger management, positive parenting, or learning to drive, just to name a few. So we find the most commonly accessed courses are through TAFE, and they are a very proud WDO sponsor. Counselling, so this can include case management, individual counselling or therapy to improve mental health, emotional or behavioural issues, and financial counselling, which Ellie mentioned previously. So if your clients are experiencing financial hardship and they have fines, it's a great opportunity for them to see a financial counsellor and reduce their fines debt at the same time. Unpaid work, so this includes volunteering at a charity, neighbourhood centre, community garden or bush care program, and you'll find that a lot of not-for-profits are WDO sponsors. Medical or mental health treatment, so this includes seeing a psychologist, a mental health nurse or accredited mental health social worker under a doctor's treatment plan. It can include voluntary or involuntary mental health treatment in a mental health facility or the community. Whoops, sorry, skipping ahead. So drug and alcohol treatment is another WDO activity that can be engaged in. So this includes drug and alcohol counselling, participating in AA or Narcotics Anonymous, supervised outpatient detoxification programs and medication compliance. And lastly, mentoring programs. And this used to traditionally be geared at young people, but now anyone of any age can access this. So common examples include working one-on-one with an experienced person to achieve the client's goals, cultural or healing programs, and mentoring programs providing post-release support for people leaving custody. And it's quite a broad category, so a lot of things can be included under that category. So I guess it's important to note that each WDO sponsor is registered to oversee particular activities either directly, by referral, or both. So this means that some sponsors may choose to oversee the activity directly at their service, or they may only have approval to report back to Revenue New South Wales on hours of engagement that a client does with another service. So it's a good idea to have an understanding of what services your clients are currently accessing, because it may be something that could be included on the WDO and reported back to Revenue New South Wales by the particular sponsor. So how can you help your clients? I can't stress enough how important it is to register to become an advocate with Revenue New South Wales. This will allow you to call the WDO hotline at Revenue New South Wales to ask questions about your client's fines. You can even obtain a list of all the fines that are outstanding in their name, and that can be helpful for clients to just have a better understanding of, what position they're in and potentially, whether it's worthwhile referring them onto our service. If the client is eligible to do a WDO, then you can assist them in finding a WDO sponsor by going on the Revenue New South Wales website. And this website has a list of sponsors for each region. But I guess it's important to note that not all sponsors are included on this list if they've chosen to be excluded from the public list, but there are many others listed. So what if a WDO is not suitable? In some circumstances, a WDO is not a suitable option for your client. So for example, your client may have received a driving-related fine and need advice about nominating a family member who was driving the car at the time of the offence. Another example may be where a client is fined for parking in a disability spot without displaying a disability parking sticker, but the client actually does have a disability parking permit. In these situations, participating in a WDO or accepting a payment arrangement with Revenue New South Wales would amount to the client accepting responsibility for the fines. So it's important that the client receive some advice about their options if they are unsure whether they are responsible or disagree with the fine being issued. Finally, a client may not dispute that they were responsible for the fines, but their circumstances make participating in a WDO impracticable. So for example, they may have a disability or chronic health problem. They may be over the age of 75, which would then limit their capacity to engage in many of the activities. They may be a single parent who can't give up care of their children due to having lack of family support or money for alternative care arrangements. Or their visa status may also limit the kinds of activities that they can engage in. So for any of these examples, it's always better to err on the side of caution and refer them to our service. If it's an issue we can assist with, we can contact the client for more information with their consent. If we can't assist, we can provide the appropriate referrals. So if you have any questions about WDOs or fines, you're always welcome to reach out to our team through the email listed on the screen. But otherwise, like Teresa said, any questions that you have, put them in the chat and we can come back to you with some answers after.
Thank you, Luana.
Not a problem. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
And thank you to everyone who presented today. And thank you to everyone for participating and attending our webinar series. Just a reminder that you'll receive an email with the answers from the Q&A section and the information and resources that we talked about in the webinar today. You'll also receive an evaluation survey, and we would really appreciate your feedback. The series has been developed in response to community needs, and there's still time to register for next week's presentation, which is the Australian Human Rights Commission. The recording of our first 3 webinars on immigration law, Safe Work New South Wales and employment law are now available on our YouTube channel, and today's presentation will be uploaded soon. Again, if you need legal help about a particular situation, start with our team at Law Access New South Wales on 1300 888 529 or via web chat at www.legalaid.newsouthwales.gov.au. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a lovely day.